Hey everyone, this is about take 6 for me. I'm hoping this is the one. This story that we're looking at is still Joseph in Genesis, and we have talked about him for a couple of weeks now. And I was trying to get through a little more this week, and I'm just realizing I can't get through it all. It's too much to do all at once. And so we're going to just break it into a small piece. And remember, our focus here is really on trusting God and having faith that He's got a plan and that He wants to bless us. And that when we trust in Him, it's very special to Him, and He loves that. So let's do a quick review. We're going to use the Children's Bible quickly for a review. Let's go all the way back to Joseph, okay? The very beginning. This is when he's young, okay? He's a boy. He's right here. And he had these weird dreams that these 10 things of wheat were going to bow down to him. And he told his brothers about it, and they're like, what does that mean we're going to bow down to you? He's like, I don't know. It's just my dream. They don't like it. So when Jacob, Joseph's father, gives him his beautiful coat of many colors, the brothers get even madder, more jealous. They're plotting against him, and it ends with them throwing him in a pit. And then, instead of killing him, they do let him live, and they sell him as a slave in Egypt to a person going to Egypt. So there he goes, and that's the last they see of him. Then we go with Joseph's story for a bit. He's a slave. He's in Potiphar's house. He's actually really successful in Potiphar's house. Let's see. Yeah. And everything's going good, but then Potiphar's wife tells lies about him. Joseph's in prison. Sad. He's in prison for a long time until these two guys get thrown in prison. A cupbearer, which is a servant of Pharaoh, and a baker. And he's able to interpret their dreams correctly, and they both get back out of prison, but unfortunately the baker is killed. But Joseph was right about the dream interpretations because God gave him the answers to what those dreams meant. Then we had Pharaoh having a weird dream about cows. He wants to know who can interpret this dream. And so Joseph is brought up to interpret the dreams, and he tells Pharaoh, remember that it symbolizes that there's going to be 7 years with lots of food, and then 7 years that's going to be really bad with no food, famine. So Pharaoh is so impressed with Joseph's dream interpretation, which actually Joseph doesn't take the credit for. Remember, he boldly gives credit to God, even though that could have meant him being sent back to prison, being killed, anything. But he boldly gives credit to God. Pharaoh likes this. He gives Joseph his ring. He tells Joseph, you're in charge of all this stuff now, and no one is greater than you except for me, and I'm the Pharaoh, So things are going much better for Joseph, and I like what it says down here. It's a nice kind of thinking question or thought. It says, Joseph went from being a prisoner in the morning to a ruler in the afternoon. Kind of rags to riches, for sure, right? That was because God had a plan for Joseph and his family. So that's what we're looking at today, is this development of this plan God had for not just for Joseph, which we can see that, right? But for also his family that was cruel to him, that abandoned him. And then also, his father that loved him so very much and thinks he's dead because of what the brothers did and lied. Okay, so we're going to start reading in the actual Bible, but I'm just going to go ahead and show you this picture. This is Jacob, Joseph's father, and this is the new youngest brother, Benjamin. And then the brothers are leaving, right? Joseph's older brothers are leaving. So let's find out what that's about. We're going to start in Genesis 42, if you'd like to follow along. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, why do you just keep looking at each other? I have heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us so that we may live and not die. They're starving. They're having this, famine in Canaan. Then 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt, but Jacob did not send Benjamin, the new brother, the young brother, because he loved him and he was afraid harm might come to him. So, here's something else important to know about Benjamin. Joseph's mother was Rachel, And Benjamin's mother is also Rachel. So they have the same mother, Rachel. Those are her only two sons. The others are by other wives of Jacob, which was a thing that happened at that time. Verse 5, so Israel's sons, remember that's Jacob's sons, were among those who went to buy grain, for the famine was in the land of Canaan also. Now Joseph was the governor of the land, the one who sold grain to all the people. We know that, right? So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. Does that make you think of anything? It makes me think of his dreams he had, right? As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger. He's probably surprised, like, how do I act? So he pretends to be a stranger. He says, where do you come from? He spoke harshly to them. From the land of Canaan, they replied, to buy food. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. You know what? He's probably wearing the Egyptian head thing, and he may even have makeup on like the Egyptians wore, so they don't recognize him. Verse 9, then Joseph remembered his dreams about them. You think that might be the first kind of inkling of like, what's going on here, God? Is this part of your plan? I think it could be, or maybe it was right when he saw them at first and he's thinking, what's going on here, God? But when he remembers that dream, and he has already said he knows that the dreams and the interpretations are from God, he's got to be thinking, about what's the plan here, God? He's obviously still doesn't exactly know what to say, so he says, you're spies. You've come to see where our land is unprotected. No, my lord, they answered, we are servants. We've come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies. And then skipping down to verse 13, it says, your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more. So they've just told two things to Joseph. Number one, they think that he's dead. They don't recognize him because they think one is no more. That means dead. They've also just let Joseph know that there's a younger brother, right? So Joseph says in verse 15, as surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. And so basically Joseph is wanting to meet this youngest brother. And, he has a brother he's never met before. So he's interested in it, in meeting him. And so he actually, I'm just going to kind of paraphrase here because it takes a long time to read it, and I don't want you to have to watch the video forever, but I do really encourage you to go back to Genesis 42 and 43 and read through this, because there's lots of good stuff in here that we're not going to have time to go through. But he says, send one of your number, verse 16, to come get your brother. The rest of you will be kept in prison, so that your words will be tested to see if you're telling the truth. If you're not, then surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies. And he put them all in jail for the next 3 days. Why? I don't really know. I think maybe he wanted them to know he was serious about bringing the younger brother to meet him. And of course, they have no idea why he wants their younger brother to come. On the third day, he lets them go. But he does say, if you need to come back here, you have to bring your youngest brother. And then the brothers say to each other, we're being punished because of our brother Joseph. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. That's why this distress has come upon us. So they're looking for reasons. Why are we being punished like this? Oh, it must be because of what we did to Joseph, and because he suffered and begged us, and we didn't listen to him back when they beat him up and threw him in the pit and sold him as a slave. And then verse 23, they did not realize that Joseph could understand them. Of course, they're speaking a different language from Joseph, but he can understand them, and he turned away from them and began to weep, but then turned back and spoke to them again. He had Simeon taken. Simeon's one of the brothers, and he's going to keep him there in jail until they come back and bring Benjamin with them. Okay? So then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to put each man's silver back in his sack, and give them provisions for their journey. So they leave. Verse 27, at the place where they stopped for the night, one opened his sack to get feed for the donkey and saw that there was the silver in his bag. So then they're all like, oh, great. It says in verse 28, their hearts sank and they turned to each other trembling and said, what is this God has done to us? Basically, they didn't steal that money back, right? But that was the money they had brought to give for the grain. And so they're like, great, now he's going to think we stole our money back, you know. Verse 29, when they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. And they told him everything, okay? And then verse 35, we're skipping down, it says, as they were emptying their sacks, they found that every one of them had their silver back in their bags. So they're like, great, he's going to think we stole our money back. Verse 36, their father Jacob said, you have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more because Simeon's there in jail. And now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me. Reuben promises his father in the next verse, if you let us take Benjamin back with us, I promise we'll bring him back safely. If not, you can put both of my sons to death. But Jacob said, my son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead. Thanks, Joseph is dead. And he's the only one left. He's the only one left of Rachel's sons, right? That's what Jacob thinks. And he loved Rachel so much. If harm comes to him on the journey you are taking, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow. Basically, Jacob's saying, if anything happens to Benjamin, I'm going to die because I can't handle it. I can't take it. So instead of looking at Joseph this week, let's think about Jacob and his trust in God. We know that Jacob was a faithful believer in God, and that God was very pleased with Jacob and his faith. But at this moment, Jacob's having a low moment on this roller coaster, right? He does not want to let go of Benjamin. He wants to hold on tight to his sweet little Benjamin. He does not want to send him to Egypt with these brothers. And then, but Joseph has already warned them if they need more food and they come back, that they better not come back without bringing Benjamin, right? So, some of you probably already know what's coming. In fact, let's just go ahead and read the first verse of chapter 43, which is where we are right now. First couple of verses. Now the famine was still severe in the land, so when they had eaten all the grain they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go back and buy us a little more food. So that Judah reminds him, we cannot go back there unless we take Benjamin with us. And he promises him, like Reuben did, look, if anything happens to him, you can do what you want to me. Verse 6, Israel, or Jacob, asked, why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother? Why did you tell him you have a younger brother? And Judah says, look, we didn't know he was going to ask this. He asked us all these questions about you and about us, and we just told him the truth. We weren't thinking he was going to ask us to bring him. Judah promises him, I promise I will bear the blame before you all my life if anything happens to him. So verse 11, Jacob says to them, okay, if you have to, then this is what you do. Take all these gifts to give the man. Hopefully he'll let Benjamin be released. And then in verse 14, Jacob ends by saying, may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. That just means like bereaved, like grieving really hard, like so depressed, So Jacob is not showing a lot of faith at this moment, is he? He is feeling just like someone's ripping his heart out, that he has to let his youngest son, his special son Benjamin, go with them, especially after losing Joseph, which is still something that he's obviously, sad about. So we all have these times when it's harder to trust, and Jacob's having that time right now, right? So let's see in the next week or two what God's plan is for Joseph and for the brothers and for Jacob. Is God out to punish everyone for what happened, or is he out to bless everyone? I can't wait to find out with you, and I hope that you have a great week. Bye, guys.